Sportsnet.
It's 5 minutes. All right, time for our Sports and the Law segment. We bring in Steve Moskowitz once a week. We bring him in, and this one is a sticky one. It's down in Florida. Florida State quarterback Jameis Winston being investigated for sexual assault back in 2012 in Tallahassee, Florida. And it seems that that investigation was tabled at the time, back when this allegedly happened. So, Steve, I'll open with you. How is it that an investigation gets tabled by the people who are doing the investigation?
See, this is really emotionally charged. Investigators are supposed to be fair to both parties, the accuser and the accused. And part of the problem is anybody can accuse anybody else of anything. It's not an allegation that he didn't have relations with a woman. He said it was consensual, which is a very common defense. So that's why when they had the rape kit, well, yes, there's matching DNA, but he never denied it. So then what you do is you have to say, well, do we have a victim here? Do we have consent? Or even worse, do we have somebody that's trying to extort money? Now, these guys are targets. On the other hand, they use who they are to influence a lot of people too. The other problem is there's some question of intoxication. Now, when you have that, that brings up the second thing is, can someone consent when they're intoxicated? So then it all goes into, well, it depends just how intoxicated you were. So if you had one sip of a wine spritzer, probably not. On the other hand, if you drank a quart of whiskey and somebody has to prop you up, that's a different story. Now, Winston says, well, wait a minute. I have witnesses that's going to clear this up. There's different types of evidence. There's physical evidence like the rape kit. But again, the defense here is consensual. So then we have the witnesses. What did they see? As far as the police, there's allegations that they threatened her and said, hey, you know, this is a big-time player, and...
Well, let me get to that, because this is something that the family of the alleged victim put out a statement to the Tampa Bay Times. This is what they said, quote, Detective Angelo, someone involved in this investigation, told the attorney that Tallahassee was a big football town, and the victim needs to think long and hard before proceeding against him, because she will be raked over the coals and her life will be made miserable. All right. Does the victim's family have something against this detective that they can now go after?
Hold on a minute there, Jim.
Sure.
He said, she said, well, I wasn't there. I don't know what was said. It's very easy for someone to make an allegation against the police or anyone there. I don't know what happened. But when people are doing their jobs, and I'm not saying everybody's perfect or that they do or they're not influenced, but on the other hand, somebody has to make a determination who's the victim here, because the police have an equal duty to the accuser and the accused.
So it would be unusual for the police to give some advice to someone, right?
Clearly. I mean,
and this would be advice. This would be some level of advice, though, if he did.
That's not advice. That's a threat.
Oh.
But, you know, again, what the investigator is supposed to do, he's a detective. He's determining the facts, and then they determine, are there enough facts here to charge someone? Because, again, that's part of the job. You don't want to just charge somebody. There are lives at stake here, both of the accuser and the accused.
You mentioned the DNA. Is that enough to charge somebody, just the DNA evidence?
Well, again, he admits that they had physical relations. That's not the issue. But he said it's consensual, which is a very, very common defense.
If, in fact, the alleged victim does not want to come forward and tell her story, that can be a very difficult thing for any victim to do. Do the prosecutors need her to do this, or can they charge?
Look at Kobe's case, where when the witness stops cooperating, usually the case falls apart. Now, again, that's part of the case here, where she says, hey, the investigators, the police dropped everything, or they threatened me, and they say, well, you stop cooperating. When the alleged victim stops cooperating, usually the case falls apart. Not always, but usually.
All right, so the consensual sex, and we've got 45 seconds, consensual sex defense, how do you get over that? How can you prove that it was anything but consensual?
Once again, that's the jury's job, where he said, she said, a jury listens to conflicting testimony, and then they make a decision. That's the way our jury system works.
This is a difficult one.
Yes, it is.
This is not one that you really, but I guess you do split hairs.
It's difficult for both the victim and the accused, because if somebody's truly a victim, you want to be able to come forward, but you don't want somebody falsely accused either.
Steve Moskowitz, every week, he breaks it down for us. Sports and the Law, thanks very much.
Always
we appreciate it. See you again next week. Sportsnet Central coming up next. Good night.